Okay, so I'm recording now, and on the podcast today is Vanessa Bighinatti, and Vanessa and I haven't met before, so I'm asking you these questions to get to know you as the listeners are getting to know you as well. Maybe you can tell me and the people listening a little bit about yourself, maybe your journey. If that's a broad question, I can be more specific, but do what you will with that.
Yeah, that is pretty broad. So I'll give you kind of a shortened version. Over my lifespan, when I was younger, I was never really that healthy of a child. And after I graduated college, I went through a really stressful time, which triggered a lot of illness for me. And I had about 35 plus symptoms that I was trying to figure out what was going on in my body. Um, that led me to lots and lots of doctor's appointments, lots of ER visits, and really rediscovering what health meant for me. So after about a year and a half of continuously trying to figure out what was going on with my health, I finally got diagnosed with a whole laundry list of illnesses. So I was diagnosed with chronic Lyme disease, Bartonella, Babesia, anxiety, SIBO, EBV, POTS. So, I had so many quote unquote illnesses. And that led me to being on treatment. So I went through various forms of treatment over the years, and I did the pharmaceutical route for a really long time. And then I realized it wasn't really working for me and what I was going through. So I switched to holistic. And that was really when I saw the needle move and saw progress and decided, okay, wow, there is a lot more to health than I could have even imagined, especially nutrition. I really learned early that whatever I was feeding and putting in my body was directly relating to my illness, triggering my symptoms, and whether I was healing or not. So I switched to this holistic route. I did an all herbal treatment, and I focused on herbs, supplements, and nutrition after my herbal treatment, which has led me to remission. So I am in remission now. I've been in remission for 3.5 years, and I continue to use herbs and food today just to maintain my health and just to get to even healthier levels than I could have even imagined.
That is, well, one, it's wonderful to hear that. And I'm thinking of a lot of different things as you're speaking, but the first one is when I saw your profile on the matchmaker, the thing that connected us with our podcast, is you had SIBO. That was one of your diagnoses, and I was diagnosed maybe 2 or 3 years ago with SIBO. So I wanted to talk to you specifically about that, maybe more just for me personally. But then you also mentioned things like leaky gut. I
Mhm.
saw in one of your profiles, and you mentioned these 35 plus symptoms. I guess my question is, what were some of these symptoms, and is leaky gut one of them, or is that like its own diagnosis?
Yeah, so I categorize like my diagnoses over here and then like my actual symptoms on this side. So yeah, and I had so many diagnoses, sometimes I forget to name them all, to be honest. So yeah, I was diagnosed with leaky gut and SIBO, and what really happened was I was on antibiotics for so long, and then medications prior to that for so long, like most of my life. It really just destroyed my gut. I was on such heavy antibiotics during my treatment of Lyme disease that it just got to the point I had to be on a liquid diet. I like physically could not eat food because everything just caused me so much pain. So they thought that I was having leaky gut. After that, the antibiotics just wiped all the good bacteria out of my system. So I really developed SIBO after that as well. So some other symptoms I had would be I had numbness over the whole left side of my body. I had a lot of neurological symptoms. So I had trouble with my motor skills. I had lots of brain fog and headaches, and I had really bad muscle and joint pain, just constant dizziness and vertigo. I was like blacking out. I had terrible, terrible heart palpitations, which is POTS, pastoral tachycardiac syndrome, which I would easily just like black out or almost faint due to my heart rate getting so high and my blood pressure being low. So that was a major symptom. And honestly, at 24 years old, I was walking with a cane because of the debilitating pain. And it was so hard for me to physically move my joints and my muscles.
Wow. That's that sounds pretty intense. You mentioned that you're in full remission. That's from everything, all of your diagnosis, full remission. Well, and you also mentioned that you're using you said herbs and mostly just what you're consuming. What, maybe you can educate me and the people listening about some of the herbs you're using, or some of the ones that are particularly helpful for your diagnoses. Maybe people listening have Lyme's disease, maybe they have SIBO. What are things that you have used to help?
Yeah. So specifically, I was paleo for a while. I'm sure most people are aware of like the Candida diet and other forms of diets that are specifically for your gut, especially like high FODMAP and low FODMAP, those kind of things for SIBO, right? For me, I literally tried them all. I tried elimination diets, I tried low FODMAP, I tried Candida diets, and it wasn't really working for me. Like it would move the needle a little bit, but then I never saw more results. Like I always plateaued. So I was paleo for a really long time. And then I decided at one point that I just didn't really enjoy the taste of meat anymore. So I ended up going plant-based vegan about 2.5 years ago. And that I noticed had it really pushed my healing to another level when I did that. And I am not one to say like meat is bad. Like it was a personal choice to be vegan, but I think going more plant-based is really where I noticed so much more healing happening. Like I still do consume mostly just fruits and vegetables. I really cut out even more processed food and really just focus on whole food plant-based diets. And that really moved the needle in my healing, especially for my SIBO and all the gut issues that I was dealing with over the years. Just focusing on those whole foods and really eliminating the processed food really helped with the digestion. Also, another thing that I've noticed that really helped heal my SIBO and my digestion overall was lowering my fat intake, which is kind of controversial now, right? Because keto is a really big diet, and most people are always like high fat, high protein diets. But I really was craving fruit and lowering my fat, so I ended up going high carb, low fat, and noticed so much healing for my gut that way, which is really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I think it's like what it points to is that our bodies respond differently. Like there are people in my life that eat things that if I were to eat it, it would be a problem for me, but they don't have
Yeah.
a problem. So it really depends on the makeup of your body. I am just starting to pay more attention to what I am consuming. For me, it's coming from, I'm a mindfulness teacher and practitioner, and it's coming from a place of just being aware of how I feel when I consume things. So the episode I did yesterday on the podcast was 30 days without caffeine. I had a guest come on the podcast. We didn't consume caffeine for 30 days, and then we reflected on it. And it really has been pretty good for my gut, not having the caffeine. And then also, probably about 10 days to 14 days ago, I was in the library. And when I go to the library, I don't go with an intention of what I'm going to read. I just kind of like roam the stacks. And I saw this book it said gluten or wheat, something about, I think it was gluten and how it's inflammatory. So I started to read it, and I have tried elimination diets like half with gluten before, where I sort of give it up, and I do notice some healing. I do notice that my gut is better, but then I kind of never really believed it, because I was like, well, I don't have celiac, so I don't think that I have an allergy. But in reading this book, I read that 15% of Americans have not either celiac or non-celiac gluten intolerance. So here's this whole other category of thing that I didn't even know existed. And because I know that existed, it made me cut out gluten as an elimination diet to try it. And for the past 2 weeks, I've been doing that, and I have noticed tremendous difference. And that is, so for me, it's like gluten really is inflammatory for my system, and it
Yeah.
seems like caffeine does that as well. Meat, I don't have as much of a problem with in terms of inflammation. So really, like, how do you help your clients determine what is what are their inflammatory trigger foods?
Yeah, so I should have mentioned this before. I have a whole list of trigger foods that I do not eat. And I also recommend my clients cutting out too. Like you just said, gluten, highly inflammatory, especially when you have gut issues and small intestinal issues. Like gluten is going to be so harsh on the system. Dairy as well. Dairy is very inflammatory, super harsh, especially gut issues. Sugar, eggs as well. Eggs are very inflammatory for people who are dealing with gut issues. And most people don't realize that. A lot
I
of
didn't
people,
know that. I eat eggs every day.
yeah, try cutting them out. I bet you're see.
Okay. All right. I like 5 days a week I make myself eggs, but because I thought it was so, I just make a rice omelet in the morning. But anyway, I didn't mean to cut you off, but go ahead.
Yeah, and did you say you're eating rice?
Yeah, that's inflammatory too.
It's not an inflammatory food, but for someone who is dealing with SIBO, it promotes unproductive bacteria growth.
Oh no.
I know, I'm so sorry. Getting
No
nervous.
rice. That's the hard thing about these diagnoses is like my doctor, my gastro put me on a low FODMAP diet, and I look at the list of things that I'm not allowed to eat, and it's so extensive. It starts to get, when I first went on the diet, like this was like 3 or 4 years ago, there's so many things that you can't eat. It becomes,
Yeah.
I remember getting like, I'm so angry when I go to eat my meal because I can't eat any of the things I want to eat. And even sometimes when you are really strict, there's still the perpetuation of the symptoms. But anyway, what about rice?
Yeah, I actually never had luck with the FODMAP diet. I tried it. I did because I had really bad SIBO and really bad, bloating and discomfort and all that stuff with it. And it never worked for me. And like you said, I felt like I was so limited and I lost a lot of joy in my meals. You know what I mean? So I really just stuck to eliminating trigger foods and not worrying about the FODMAP stuff because I just felt so limited. And, I still healed without doing the low FODMAP. So I think everybody is different. But I find that consuming lots and lots of fruits and veggies and not limiting my fruits and vegetables has been more beneficial in my healing than cutting those out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, like for example, when I was having a really bad flare up of my SIBO, I ate one papaya a day for 3 months, and I haven't had a flare up since of SIBO, and that was huge. Papayas are really healing for your gut and your intestines. So consuming high amounts of melon too, melon and papaya are just so good for your gut. Like it's funny you brought up the caffeine challenge. I haven't really challenged myself to do this, but I intuitively eat. And since about May, I have been having a half of a watermelon every day. And now most people would say that is so much sugar, but because it's glucose and it's fruit sugar, it is different in your body. And I have been juicing a half of a watermelon every day for the last, I guess, almost 4 months now, and have noticed significant changes in my digestion for the better.
Wow. A watermelon. So it doesn't have similar compounds to the papaya? Like, is it a similar, when you say you're healing from both of those, are they giving you a similar reaction in your body?
Yeah, well, papaya is really good for getting rid of unproductive bacteria that could be in your small intestine, and also just healing your lining and your gut in general. Whereas melons are really good for digestion overall, but also really good for detoxing your liver and just really rebuilding your digestion. So I did the papaya last year, and that was so beneficial. And I had intuitively eaten that for the 3 months. And now I've moved to watermelon this season. And my digestion is so much better. My brain is just so much clearer. I have so much more energy. I feel so much more hydrated. And I'm just noting like I barely bloat anymore, and I feel like I can just digest so like really break down the food I'm eating now.
You know, it's interesting when you talk about having a papaya every day or watermelon every day. I think about traditional Western medicine. There are these pills they give you, and not even just for your stomach or your gut. It's for anything that you're on medicine for. You take it every day as prescribed because it needs, and it for like mental health. If you take an SSRI to help with anxiety or depression, you need to be on it for 2-3 weeks before the body starts seeing the effects of it. So I use that example with meditation also, is that you there has to be a commitment to it and doing it often for the body to see the effects of it. But I never really thought of it in terms of what I'm consuming. But when I think about the caffeine challenge that I did, my body, it got worse before it got better for the first
Yeah.
2 or 3 weeks. Like my body was not liking the change for 2 or 3 weeks, and then it readjusted. So I never thought of like a watermelon juice for 4 months. That is like committing to it like medicinal, with medicinal purposes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, food is medicine. As a society, we just forget that, right? We don't see that. I mean, hundreds of years ago, they literally healed through food. And I am like a walking testament that you can do that because I've healed mostly through food. So, yeah. And like you said, it takes a little while for your body to shift and to start healing through it. And most people experience that. It gets worse before it gets better when healing from lots of chronic illnesses, especially something like chronic Lyme or a chronic illness. As you're healing, it's like a detox period. You're flushing it out and you feel worse. And you're almost like, oh my God, is this even working? And then you break through and you feel so much better on that other side, you know? So yeah, same with if you were to try eating papaya for a few months, you might notice that like, oh gosh, my digestion is so terrible for these couple of weeks. And then as you push through, you're like, oh my gosh, this is where my digestion was supposed to be this whole time, you know?
I Sometimes it can be, at least for me, a little bit overwhelming, the amount of things that you can do for your digestion in terms of traditional medicine or what you could do with your diet. There's paleo and there's plant-based, and there's, you know, well, even just in the conversation that we're talking about today, there's so many different things. How do you help people break this down? Like, how do you help people get it to the point where it's not so overwhelming? There's not so many choices. There's like X, Y, Z, A, B, C, elemental P, do this for your gut, and like all these things. There's so many compounds with this type of food group. Like it feels so overwhelming at sometimes. How do you simplify it?
Yeah, it is overwhelming. There is so much information out there. Everybody's an expert on this and that. You know, I mean, it's overwhelming. And especially for someone who's dealing with a chronic illness and trying to research it, you're just pulled in so many directions at this point. And like you said, it's overwhelming. I totally understand that. So my approach is get back to the basics. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be overwhelming, get back to the basics. Where did we start, right? Cutting out processed foods, cutting out trigger foods, focusing on whole foods, plant-based, and that doesn't mean cut out meat. When I say plant-based, I mean the majority of your meals are fruits and vegetables. That alone shifts the needle, helps people start seeing some healing progress. Then what I do with my clients is then we start adding in supplements and herbs and stuff like that to continue the healing, to, advance a little bit faster and stuff like that. Or if they're experiencing symptoms, we slow down, because sometimes, I mean, it depends on the person. I find that some people are extremely sensitive. Like I was extremely sensitive, so I needed to do things in really small baby steps. Whereas some people need triple the amount as what I would need, right? Like, so for example, I'll give you this example. Lemon balm is an herb. Not sure if you're familiar with it.
I think it might be in some teas that I drink, but I've never
Yeah.
seen it, like the herb.
Yeah, it's in a lot of teas actually. Lemon balm is a great herb for your central nervous system, and it's really good if you have anxiety. It calms your nerves down. It's just a great herb in general. It also happens to be antiviral. Um, so it's pretty strong. And as someone who went through a lot of neurological symptoms, like one cup of tea of lemon balm was enough for me. Whereas if I were to like move to the tincture or the supplement of it and have a dropper full, that would like send me over the edge and I would be flaring up and detoxing too hard. Whereas someone else, I've had clients that need 3 droppers full of lemon balm that's how much their body can take, you know? So everybody's different. And I always think that starting slow and steady is the best way to make the results happen and not overwhelm your body with what's going on.
I'm thinking about the connection between the body and mind. So I'm a psychotherapist by trade and also a mindfulness teacher. But more and more, what is finding its way into my work as a psychotherapist is seeing what people are consuming. Now, I'm not trained to do that, so I have my limitations. But I have a client who, waking up with anxiety every day, and I through our discussion and we were talking, what are you eating? He's like, well, I'm eating, a lot of junk food. Well, what time? Late at night, 12 a.m. I'm eating a lot of junk food and I'm drinking 6 to 7 cups of coffee a day. Well, I'm like, well, you're probably experiencing withdrawal symptoms from it. So like the connection between what we're putting in our body and how we feel in our mind is undeniable. I'm a gardener also, so I think about what I feed my plants. Like if I give them an organic fertilizer and water and give them the sun that they need, they will be healthy. If they get the nutrients that they need, it will show. And if I poured Coca-Cola into the plants, they would start turning brown and yellow. And if
Right.
they didn't get enough water, if they didn't get enough potash or whatever compounds are in these organic fertilizers, they would suffer. So for me, that helps simplify it. It's like they're basic nutrients that a living organism needs, and if it gets it, it will be healthy. If it doesn't, it won't be healthy.
Yeah.
So what do you see as the connection, at least in your experience, between your mental health and your physical health related to your gut and your diet?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I totally agree with everything you just said. Our mind and body are so connected, and it has to do with what you're putting into your body. All that sugar and caffeine that one person is eating is definitely relating to depression and anxiety and other, mental things that they could have going on. Whereas if you're eating a cleaner diet, you might have a reduction in your anxiety and your depression, all that stuff like that. I have personally experienced depression and anxiety really, really badly. I had really bad panic attacks for a very long time when I was healing. And the more I cut out the trigger foods, the better I felt. And another thing I think is amazing. Have you ever heard of Ayurveda?
No.
Okay, Ayurveda is um I'm not going to do this justice, but it's a form of like holistic beliefs in medicine from I believe like India and that area. And it's about your body has 3 different doshas, and it's about balancing your body through food and your mind as well, and using certain foods. So they have like a whole grounding aspect to it, right? When you're feeling very anxious, you're not very grounded. And if you support your body eating grounding foods, it will actually help ground your body more and reduce that anxiety. So I really used some Ayurveda practices when I was trying to heal my anxiety. So, like, I was eating a lot of root vegetables when I was dealing with loads of anxiety to help reduce my anxiety. And it truly did help. And that's actually something I recommend to my clients now who are experiencing a lot of anxiety. I'm like, eat more potatoes, eat more root vegetables. Those are going to help ground you.
Wow. Yeah, because like you think about when you say a root vegetable, it is a vegetable that grows in the ground. So it is, and it's earthier than maybe a tomato, which grows above the ground. Like the root, the potato comes out of the ground with the ground and the earth on it.
Yes.
So when you say it grounds you, it's like it's an interesting, like the things that have the ground on them will ground you. And
Yeah.
I'm growing potatoes and carrots in my garden, and I've never paid attention to how I feel when I'm eating them. Maybe that's the other thing is I I'm moving into a new chapter in my life where I'm doing these things where how do I feel when I drink coffee? How do I feel when I don't drink coffee? How do I feel? I'm focusing on what I'm eating and then how it is affecting my body. What would be like a recommendation as far as how to keep track, how to start doing that, how to like start being more aware of your diet, and like a practical technique for tuning into that.
Yeah. So I think there's two sides to this, right? I think it's really good to keep a journal, a health journal. This is something I did, you know what I mean? And especially people who are dealing with lots of illnesses and symptoms like that, it's so good to keep a journal of what you're experiencing, what is affecting your body. And, I would even get down to day by day. Here's what I ate, here's what I felt after I ate that, and kind of brought that awareness, like you're saying, like, okay, I just had coffee and now I'm having really bad heart palpitations. Is that linked together? And then I cut coffee out. I haven't had caffeine in over like 6 years now, right? So it's like, all right, that really did affect me and I cut it out, right? So I think it is really good to journal, keep a diary or a journal of what you're going through. And then the other thing is, though, to not solely focus on every little thing, because healing is a big picture. It's great to get down there and figure out, okay, did this trigger me, or is this, you know, actually detoxing? That's the other thing, is people don't always realize, they're like, okay, I just had this potato and now I'm so bloated. Am I bloated because the potato was bad for me, or it was because it was a detox reaction because it's so healing? um
Whoa, you're blowing my mind right now. So you can be bloated because the body is liking it?
Yes. Okay, so goes back to what we were just saying about, remember when you said those first 2 to 3 weeks of cutting out
Yeah.
caffeine got worse before it got better? It's the same with healing, and especially with food. You can get extremely bloated from eating potatoes because it's actually healing and killing off that unproductive bacteria in your gut, and getting rid of it and trying to help heal your body. And as long as you continue and push through, on the other side, you will see all that healing the potatoes were doing. So same with that papaya, like I was saying, for those 2 months, 2 to 3 months, I was eating a papaya every day. The first like 2 weeks, I was bloated, my digestion was terrible. And then after that, after I pushed through to the other side, because I knew how healing papaya is, that I
Hmm.
wasn't actually triggering me, as I got to the other side, my digestion improved so much. And I noticed I was less bloated.
It makes me think about, I've been recently, because I gave up the caffeine, I want to find something else to drink in the morning to have like a new ritual. And I've been reading about mushroom teas. And I have tried mushroom teas in the past, but there's one that I just started drinking that it has, oh, I have the list here. Just quickly, uh, lion's mane, reishi, turkey tail, shiitake, chaga, cordyceps. And I've started to do some preliminary research on what these things do. And like, to put it simply, in my understanding of the research, a lot of these are very anti-inflammatory, they could be antiviral, and they help vitalization, focus, all of these things. So I bought the tea that has all these things, and I drank it for 3 days, and my body did not respond well, so I stopped drinking it. And I wonder if what you're saying is like, how do people know if it's your body, if it's a trigger food, or if it's your body healing? How do you know?
Yeah, that's the tough part. And that's why I recommend working with someone,
Okay.
because it's not always easy to tell if it is triggering you or if it's detoxing. For the most part, if it's some sort of processed food, if it's like a grain, or it's on a no food list, which I have my own no food list. I'm happy to share that with you later if you want that. But if it was something on there, I would say, hey, that is triggering you. Whereas if it's like a fruit or vegetable, it could be more of a detox reaction, right? And that list that you were saying, like chaga and reishi, those are known as the king and queen of mushrooms. They're so good for you. You know what I mean? Um, so I don't know enough about what you experienced to say like, oh, that was just a detox, but yeah, it's not always easy to tell. I would say typically a detox is something that's not going to last more than a day, right? So if you're experiencing like a lot of bloating, typically that would be like, for me it would be a couple of hours. Like if I had like some potatoes, um and I was bloated for like 3 hours or up until the next morning, I would know that that was a detox for me rather than a flare.
Okay. Well, sometimes I'll do this. At this point, do you have any question? Like, is there anything that we've talked about so far that you would go back to that you think there's more to get out of it?
Yeah, I would love to touch upon two things. One, I'm so happy to hear you're gardening. That's amazing. I love to garden as well. And the thing that people don't realize is growing your own food has so many benefits. And even if you just have some herbs on your windowsill, the amount of probiotics that are on the plants that you're growing yourself are outweigh any probiotic that you could take. So there are so many probiotics when you're picking your tomatoes from your garden or cutting some herbs down, or picking your own lettuce and just rinsing it off quickly rather than scrubbing it, because you don't want those organisms to get off the food. And then when you eat those, those are so good for your gut. So yeah, anybody who can grow a little bit of herbs or a full garden, I always recommend to do that.
I drink herbal tea, and they have a lot of them have medicinal benefits. But when I think of herbal tea, I think of rose hips, hibiscus, uh, lemon balm, chamomile. These things. That's what I think about as herbal. But for the first time, I'm thinking when you say the herbs that you're growing have these probiotics. I also grow parsley and basil and oregano. These things. I guess these potentially also have medicinal benefits.
Oh my gosh, parsley is so good for you. Yes, intake all the parsley you can. Parsley is so good for you. Basil, yeah, thyme. Thyme is a fantastic herb. Like, people really underrate this herb, but thyme is antiviral and it's so good for you. If you have a cold or flu going on, start making some thyme tea. Throw fresh thyme on your salads. Like, add it to soups, whatever you need to do. It's so beneficial for you. Yeah, like anything you're growing in the garden herb wise is probably amazing for you. Like, you can grow your own lemon balm if you wanted to.
Right. That's I never consider that. It's always just been more of just like a flavor thing. But it's
Mm,
good to know that the things that I'm growing are also medicine.
yeah. Yeah. Something that I do is I grow so many herbs. I probably have like 6 or 7 herbs. And I just, every time I have lunch, I cut a little bit of each herb and just sprinkle it on my salad, because one, it's giving me so many powerful nutrients and benefits from just that herb itself, but also because I just picked it from my garden, has lots of good organisms and stuff like that on it as like a probiotic for my digestion. So
Wow. See, this is why education is so important. Like, just from going when I went to the library, just picking up that book, it changed my relationship to how I thought gluten could affect me, and then it made me change the way that I was consuming, and it helped me. So I think that there may be a lot of people listening that that didn't know that the herbs that you're growing have these beneficial organisms, and they could be medicinal. So it's been in my backyard, and sometimes I just I'll give the basil to my neighbor, or I'll give the thyme to my neighbor or something, which that's good because then she's getting the medicine. But maybe I would be making more thyme tea if I knew about this.
yeah, one of my favorites is hibiscus and thyme together. Hibiscus is so powerful for your liver. It's a deep liver cleanser and purifier. And then thyme is very antiviral, just protects any kind of toxins that you may pick up, just, being around other people. And I just combine the two of them with some raw honey, and I put it in a pitcher, and it's so great as like a little refreshment for people who are coming over, and it's so beneficial for you.
It's You mentioned that when you were 24, you were walking with a cane. So this has been like a long journey for you. And I think that may be something that could help me and other people break it down, is that you learn these things as you go. Once you enter into this world of living in this way and exploring, it can be, not only does it become less overwhelming over time, but it seems like you're really having fun with it.
Yeah, I truly enjoy the lifestyle I live now. And if you asked me this 5 or 6 years ago, okay, so I'm Italian, if you didn't notice from my last name. So I'm used to eating breads and pasta
Yeah.
and cheese on everything, you know? Um, so when I first had to cut out gluten and dairy and sugar and that kind of those foods, I was devastated, you know? I was like, this is my life. And it was challenging to learn all this information over time and implement it. You know, I made tons of mistakes, but I did the best I could with the knowledge I had at the time. And you just keep growing and you keep learning and you keep finding things that are better for you and or helping you heal in your journey. And then you get to a point where you embrace it and you love it, and this you're like, I'm going to do this way. And now I love everything I eat. I love what I do. And I feel confident in where I'm at with everything I learned now. So I think, you know, everybody's doing the best they can, and it's just about keeping going and making mistakes, but getting back to it, you know?
You said there were two things you wanted to get back to: the garden. What was the other?
Oh, yes. The other one was your morning routine. So so my morning routine, first thing in the morning is lemon water, because that really flushes out the liver from all the hard work it did the night before. And then I do a green juice. So then I either do celery juice or I make another kind of green juice with lots of vegetables and some fruit and stuff. And then I do a smoothie, and that holds me over till about noon. And that has been like the best morning routine I could have ever imagined. And it gives me so much energy. I love that you're adding in some sort of mushroom tea. I usually do chaga tea myself, but grounding into a morning routine really sets you up for success in the day. So I'm just all about those.
I Since I stopped drinking the caffeine, it's been, for a while, it's been lemon, hibiscus, rose hips, that type of like herbal tea blend, or a peach tea with hibiscus. And I'm trying the mushroom tea now, but for a lot of times I eat the rice omelet. Like I make white rice with just eggs and white rice with lemon juice in it. And I'm thinking of maybe starting my day with more vegetables now that you're saying it. Yeah. What do you, I think that I don't know, as you're speaking, I'm like, there's so many experiments that I can run. And I want to try to do them like maybe 10 to 30 days at a time to see how each thing is affecting me. But it really feels like it could be fun. The way you're making it sound fun, and it's cool that you haven't had caffeine in 6 years, but it's possible for people listening that you could still have a lot of energy and not drink caffeine.
Yeah, I have more energy. Actually, it's so funny. All my friends are always like, how do you have this much energy? Like, imagine what you would be like on caffeine. And I'm like, I just have natural energy at this point because I nourish my body. It's like, you don't need the caffeine to do it. And like you were saying, you know, we're so used to like a standard American diet as our breakfast, you know, like eggs, bacon, or pancakes, that kind of stuff. Like, you could do anything you want for breakfast. Like, you can have so much fun with it. I have a juicer, and it was like the best thing I've ever purchased in my life because I juice literally everything, and just make these really delicious juices in the morning. You know, one of my favorites is cucumber, celery, apple, lemon, a little ginger, and even some parsley in it. And I make a big juice, like 32 ounces, and I'll drink that for breakfast. And not only do I feel so good and light and refreshed after that, but I feel so hydrated because you just drank so much, you know, liquid and there's water in there, you know? So I like to start my day off like really light. And I mean, smoothies are a great option too. Like, I've been doing smoothies for like 5 years straight. So
That's great. Um, Okay, Vanessa, this is an invigorating conversation, to be honest, but as we do have a time limit, so we're moving towards being out of time. But clearly there's a lot here to be talked about. So I would love it. And I'm sure the people listening would appreciate another episode of part 2. But as we move towards this episode being done for today, how can people connect with you? So in addition, for those listening, in addition to the healing and nutrition coaching, Vanessa's also doing online Reiki. Well, I'll let you tell them what you do and how they can connect with you if they want to. Like you said, it can be really helpful to be doing this with the support of someone, and you seem like a perfect person to be doing that for them. So how can they connect?
Yeah, so I do one-on-one sessions with clients. So that'll be nutrition guidance. And then I also do distance Reiki, which is a form of energy healing. I really think it's great as a supplement to everything you're doing as someone heals. Great way to relax and bring just deeper healing in. So I do both of those, and you can either connect with me on my website or email, or you can find me on Instagram. So my Instagram name is Healing with Ness, and it's healing W period Ness, Ness. And then my website is healingwness.com. So you can reach me either of those ways. My email's on my website. And yeah, I would love to talk to anybody who's interested in learning more and talking more about food. So
That's beautiful. I will put if you send me the links to all these things, I'll put them in the description. If you're listening on Spotify, iTunes, or any audio platform, it'll be in the bio. And then also, if you're watching on YouTube, I'll put it in the description below. And yeah, I would recommend that you all check out Vanessa's website and her services. And I want to say thank you for giving us your time and your expertise. It's been a pleasure to learn myself, and hopefully for the people listening, they can learn a lot. I mean, there's been a lot of education just in the 30-40 minutes we've been talking. So I think that people who could reach out to you and connect with you, there's a lot more to learn there.
yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.
Yeah, so we'll connect about a part 2. But
yeah, that sounds awesome.
I'm gonna stop the recording, but you can hang out for a second.